New this morning, disgraced former Congressman Eric Swalwell now being investigated by the Department of Justice following multiple sexual assault allegations against him. U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Judge Jeanine Pirro, opening a hotline for any information regarding, quote, alleged sexual or inappropriate conduct in D.C. Joining me now, California Post opinion editor Joel Pollak. Joel, it's great to see you again. And New York Post writer Miranda Devine says that Swalwell's fall from grace was by design so that the Democrats can keep their, quote, grubby hands on California. Your reaction to her article here?
Well, the timing is certainly interesting because Swalwell is one among many candidates on the ballot. By the way, he's still on the ballot, even though he's dropped out of the race. He was one of more than half a dozen Democrats who were splitting the vote. And that curious circumstance in the race for the open governor's seat was allowing two Republicans to lead the polls, Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. By the way, in some polls, they still lead the polls. Democrats have a math problem. Half a dozen serious candidates splitting an electorate that, even if it shows up at 75% Democrat, is still going 6 or 7 different ways, whereas the Republicans are splitting the remainder only 2 or 3 ways, really 2 ways. So this happened not because of a sudden rush of conscience, not because of investigative journalism. This happened because Democrats are trying to whittle the field down, even though, of course, his name will still be on the ballot, so that Republicans don't shut them out of the general election under the California jungle primary system.
What do you make of the $125 million spend from Tom Steyer?
You know, he does have the ability to spend himself into prominence, but I covered his presidential campaign in 2019, 2020, and he spent a fortune on that as well, and then came up short in South Carolina. He does not resonate with minority voters and never has. And it's not because of anything specific that he says or does. It's just because he does not seem to be able to empathize with the concerns of those communities. There's also something that voters perceive as inauthentic about him because he made his fortune in fossil fuels, yet he has made his political reputation as a climate crusader. So he is attacking high gas prices, for example, but one of the reasons gas prices are so high is that the politicians he donated to elect in California have adopted policies that have raised those gas prices, and his policies would continue to raise those gas prices. So it all comes across as just a little bit inauthentic.
Well, and also, too, the gas blending, the regulatory situation, the tax situation in California in general is what keeps your gasoline prices so much higher than the rest of the nation. And that's something that maybe the new governor can work on. I do want to let our viewers know that Steve Hilton's going to be joining Maria on Monday on this show. Again, he really leading the polls there as far as the Republican side of this. So it's going to be one to watch. I want to ask you about this because Vice President Vance's anti-fraud task force found $600 million plus of fraud in Los Angeles. They suspended 447 hospice care centers, 23 health agencies. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that total fraud in the Golden State could be upwards of $5 billion. Minnesota fraud is also in the crosshairs in this. That could be $9 billion in alleged fraud. Multiple videos from independent journalist Nick Shirley have uncovered the problems in both of these states. But in California, Joel, this new bill that was just introduced in the Assembly they're calling it the Stop Nick Shirley Act. They want to stop people from trying to expose government fraud.
California has a long history of suppressing free speech when journalists go where Democrats don't want them to. The first example was when California prosecuted Daniel Daleiden, who made an undercover video of Planned Parenthood when he showed that they were selling fetal tissue from abortions. And instead of going after Planned Parenthood, the authorities went after Daleiden, and they prosecuted him using a statute that limited your ability to record. It was the first time anyone had ever been prosecuted under the statute, and that's California. Gavin Newsom signed a law in 2024 designed to protect Kamala Harris, banning the use of AI in parody videos online. And if you made a parody involving a politician, you had to attach a disclaimer saying this is a parody, not real. And a federal judge threw it out saying this is a violation of the First Amendment. And by the way, attaching a disclaimer to a joke ruins the joke. That's obvious to everybody. But in California, there's a long history of quashing the First Amendment when it comes to investigative journalism about fraud and about things that taxpayers want to know about.
Yeah, Chris Johnson's upset with me. Chris, jump into this.
Yeah, I just would love for you to just get into how the California politics works, because I think people see the fraud and they think, well, it's a no-brainer to crack down on this. I don't understand why, Democrats in California are cracking down on this. So, Joel, I would love for you to explain sort of how the NGO industrial complex, where a lot of these special interest groups control, the state government despite the will of the voters and despite the obvious problems that need fixing.
Well, you can look here at Los Angeles. We have a mansion tax similar to what you were discussing in a previous segment that Mayor Mamdani is imposing. We have a mansion tax on real estate transactions that are higher than $5 million, not just mansions, but also commercial buildings. And the money collected is supposed to go to homeless services. But already the city has lost track of billions of dollars in homeless spending. And this new money that's been collected, it goes to NGOs, and those NGOs, non-governmental organizations, include organizations with a long record of suing the city. They include political organizations that support the defund the police movement and are out there in the streets costing the city more money to stop the riots that they instigate. So there is this complex, as you mentioned, where money that's raised goes to left-wing groups. Those left-wing groups then either help elect Democrats or keep left-wing issues on the front burner, and you end up spending more money to address those issues, and it's a cycle that goes on and on. They re-elect the politicians who pay them, and that's the problem in California. They'll find billions of dollars in fraud, but actually a lot of the fraud is legalized through this feedback mechanism, this triangle of agitation, election, and organization.
I always say follow the money, and that is a follow the money story, Joel. I'm glad you brought that to our attention. Before you go, I do want to ask you about this. A recent UCLA survey found that Los Angeles residents are more unsatisfied with their quality of life now than at any point in the last decade. The mayor, Karen Bass, rolling out a brand new 14-point climate plan to cut emissions, expand renewable energy projects, become carbon neutral by 2045. I mean, how does this affect the upcoming mayor's race there?
Well, I don't know that it does, because there is a problem in Los Angeles in that the areas most affected by bad service delivery, my neighborhood, Pacific Palisades, for example, which burnt down largely in the fire, those have remained fairly isolated, whereas other areas of the city continue to support Karen Bass. So unless it was your house that burned down or you lost a job in a neighborhood that burned down, you might not feel it. These problems pop up one by one. It hasn't yet really dawned on the electorate that this is a systemic problem. She's got a climate policy, the Climate Action Plan. It builds on the Green New Deal policy of Eric Garcetti. Eric Garcetti decided to mothball 3 natural gas power plants and to use solar and wind. Well, a major solar plant in California is in danger of shutting down out in Ivanpah. And the unions actually opposed this. One union in particular, the union that staffs the public works facilities. They said, we're going to lose tens of thousands of jobs. And they actually elected a Republican for city council in a special election to oppose this Green New Deal. So there is actually opposition to this plan. It's not clear how the lights are going to get turned on.
Exactly.
I mean, Mayor Bass's plan doesn't tell us. So
yeah, exactly. How are you going to keep the lights on in the state? Joel, that is a perfect way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Joel Pollak.
Thank you.